The Thinker. Aaron, what's good, man?
What's poppin', B? How you doing, man?
Not much, man. Doing all right, man. I ain't gonna say I'm doing well. I'm not gonna do the Minnesota thing. Minnesota, your life can be in turmoil. It can be awful, and we'll say we're good. Everything's great.
Good?
Now, life has been a stretch in the past week, but it's good to be back on the podcast for sure.
Cool, good deal. Yeah, I felt like we've been gone for a minute. I know we both had some traveling things and things going on, but glad to be back with the fam. Hope everybody's having a good week. Hope everybody's staying healthy, mentally healthy, physically, spiritually, emotionally. But we got some good topics to talk about tonight, so I'm excited.
Absolutely. So today's episode of the Jegna and The Thinker, we are talking about the black male image, the image of black men. And 2021 has been very, very interesting. If you've been paying close attention to black men, we have been the ultimate grift. Now, for folks who don't know what grifting is when you utilize a opportunity, a person, a situation to build your clout, to make money, to do whatever. In 2021, it's been almost every month a black man has been the grift.
You ain't lying.
Now, we could talk about Kevin Samuels.
Fact.
We could talk about Dr. Umar Johnson. We could talk about Derek Jackson. We could talk about Joe Budden.
Yeah.
Who have I missed?
You could always throw LeBron, you can throw LeBron in there every other month.
Yeah, for the sports folks, LeBron, he sneezes. I mean, he literally went to a basketball game for his son with Drake, and they didn't even talk about the game. They talked about him at the high school, the AAU basketball game.
Right.
It's like, I mean, we are the grift right now. There's nothing else to talk about but how black men are doing any and everything, and it's all wrong. So we wanted to have this dialogue tonight to just put that out there for people to pay attention. What is going on with black men? I mean, I've always had that concept of, the Nas concept, niggas ain't shit. That is a meme when it comes to black men that has been in our community for at least 40 years, where we just have this consistent thought process that black men ain't nothing. And it's just continued on and on and on. So anyway, man, so what have you seen in the last couple months when it comes to black men?
Man, you brought me some flashbacks. You talked about Derek Jackson. I forgot what he looked like.
Derek Jackson, man. He was playing for a good month.
Yeah. But, I had to, Brandon, I'll be honest with you. When you think about it, I really had to reset and actually go through all the images that you were saying. And I'm like, we are very often topics and points of contention.
Right.
It's rarely ever on constructive terms. Let me start with that. It's rarely ever on constructive terms. It's rarely ever as, hey, these black men are saying something that's constructive. It's positive. These black men are improving society. It seems like, and I could be wrong, we have a few examples, but it always seems like what these men are saying is not constructive. And that's a major, major issue. I think one of the interesting things is I think Kevin Samuels did a broadcast maybe a couple of weeks ago, and he was actually talking about similar topic, the birth of a nation, and how that image of the black man has been constructed, and how it's actually up to us to change that image, because traditional media, and I agree with them, traditional media is out the door the way that it's normally been done, because now you can kind of choose your platforms. And as a society, we can kind of choose to what we are going to intake for ourselves. And so it's up to us to police these images, to talk about them, which I actually think, and even with those people that you said, I've actually think that we've done a pretty good job, because the one thing that the internet has actually given us is the opportunity to exchange and share views. Now, I am with Mr. Fuller, which as sometimes this can get a little bit obsessive, and then we have to ask ourselves, what exactly are we talking about? And is this constructive or not? But the fact that black men are even exchanging views, Brandon, I even see that being a problem.
I do know, and a lot of the YouTube, and I'm focusing specifically on YouTube because this is where a lot of this is being created.
Hmm.
But over the last, I would be honest with you, over the last maybe year and a half or so, there's a lot of black men content creators that I just have kind of slowly stopped listening to.
Mm,
I stay subscribed to their channels just so that they have, high numbers and they have at least one more sub from me. But I have drifted away from the content. And we've talked about the Black Manosphere before. Some people may be familiar with this, some people may not be.
right.
But there is a space, there's social spaces. This is not just YouTube, it's Facebook as well. I would even say some of the Black Manosphere piece have gone over to Twitter, and then Discord is another popular area people are having these conversations.
Right.
But it has just turned into WWE, man. I mean, it's just a battle royal every weekend. I remember when there were constructive conversations. We'll hop on BGS's channel every Saturday, sometimes a couple different times a week, and be on there for like 7-8 hours having conversations throughout the evening, man.
Right.
And what has happened is it just has turned into a bunch of fighting. I mean, we can go to Tommy Sotomayor. I mean, literally every video he's made in the last 2 months has been coming at Kevin Samuels. And then when Kevin started to get a little dimmed down a little bit, and then Kwame popped up, now he's going after him. I'm like, what is going on? It's like, what are we arguing about? Damn, this stuff is crazy, man. I mean, think about it. Tariq Nasheed, I had to fall back on him a long time
That's
ago.
a fact. That's
Jason
a fact.
Black.
I love Tariq. And listen, and here's the thing. Tariq introduced me to Dr. Welsing, Mr. Fuller, all these different things. And this is not a shot at anybody. This is even something that I've even heard him say. You got to take in what works and leave the rest of the stuff that you don't like behind.
Right.
And if you start to do more content that's more based upon clowning, the crispy puppets and all, let's be real. That's the content.
Man, the Roland Martin, though, that was great.
That is funny. The Roland But the reality is that there's only so much that we can intake, because I always go back to Mr. Fuller, is what you're doing constructive. Because all we're doing basically on the YouTube, on the internet, let's be honest, is that, what's that game that they used to say? You're playing the dozens.
Cap.
You're just
flaming, frying, roasting. Yep.
Yeah. So we're just throwing insults at each other on the internet, as opposed to throwing them to each other in face to face. And also, we have to be very realistic. And I hate to continue to use Kevin, but he makes a lot of good points. And one of the points he's made, I've made it before, is that if people are going to indulge in it and pay for it, that's the kind of content that you will see. When people stop paying for it and they stop indulging in it, then you will be forced to make different kind of content. And so we as ourselves, as actually Black men, have to ask ourselves truly, what do we really want ourselves to look like? Like, seriously, do we not want to be clowns? Do we want to be looked as constructive fathers, leaders, businessmen, in the medical profession, or whatever we do? Or do we want to continuously have a silly image? And that's something we have to be very honest with ourselves when we talk about it.
Right. Absolutely. One thing I think we should kind of talk about and define is, who is the image for? Because a lot of folks will say, well, we need to look good for white folks. And I'm not even considering white folks in this conversation, to be honest.
No, not at all. Yeah, this is about us. Yeah.
Exactly. The image is for us, and then the younger men behind us, to have something that they can role model themselves after, and have some different type of I don't want to say guidance, but at least some kind of foundation of what constructive masculinity looks like, because this stuff is not constructive at all. 100%. And I hear these young, and I'll tune in as much as I can before I'm just like, okay, this is not constructive. Right. And I'll hear these young dudes, 17, 18, 19, 23, they'll hop on these conversations and they're just like far gone, bro. Like, that's like, damn. And then you got these older dudes who are just like jumping on them. They ain't trying to teach these young dudes nothing. They up there attacking them. And it just becomes fighting back and forth. Right. It's wild, man. So we really have to consider that this image is not for non-Black men. It's really not even for Black women. It's for us to have different guidance. And I would actually I would say it's for younger Black women to see different types of masculinity, because I don't think we're changing too many. I think Kevin, we could use him as an example for tonight. I think he's highlighting that we ain't gonna be changing a lot of older Black females' minds on the image of Black men. Like, we have to reach a younger demographic.
No, not at all.
We are toast. We are toast to being a sister.
Yeah,
man.
not at all.
We're
and
done.
I think, and I agree with that, Brandon. I think the other thing is that the images kind of get convoluted and they get mixed because there's a lot of, like, I continuously talk about, you got Earn Your Leisure, Black men, you got Sleepers for Suckers, Black men. You have so much constructive content that's out there about Black men, and they're talking to the entire community, but the message is coming specifically from Black men, and they're even having to. And I remember I was talking to a buddy of mine, and one of the episodes that he didn't like that they did was they had Dame Dash on there. Yeah. And the reason that he didn't, but the reason he said that's not, he said Dame didn't align with the brand because he said it became kind of gossipy. And I understood where he was coming from, even though Dame is a great businessman, I kind of understand. So we're always trying to play that in the middle, even with the content that we're creating, which is to, okay, I got to get you engaged, but now that I got you in, and that's a question actually for you. Can we do, this is a question for Brandon. Do we need to, let's be real. We have, for us as Black people, our attention span, we're not honest about these things. We love entertainment and we love a car crash. For Black men, in order for them to engage in some of the more constructive content, do we need to throw a car crash at them?
Yes, unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, I knew he was gonna say it too.
Like you set me up. I gotta watch what I say now. I'm important these days.
Nah.
You know, yes, I think we have gotten to a place, honestly, I would say over the last 4 generations of Black men. So Black men born in the late 70s all the way to now, where we've been propagandized with anti-Black media, or not. I don't want to just say media because people just think that that's the only thing. I mean, it's in the community. It ain't just what's on TV and on YouTube.
Yeah, that's a fact. Yeah, it's not.
It is right outside folks' door.
You go to school, you go to the store, you go to the bodega, it's right there. Yeah, it's not.
It's right
the
there.
Man dangling an anti-Black. Yeah, it don't work like that. It don't work like that.
It's just not like that. But we've had enough of that for so long that it's become normalized. So when it's not there, it's boring. And I've seen this when I've done groups with young Black men. I mean, I've done, part of being a therapist, one of the things, especially as a marriage and family therapist, you have to get what's called relational hours to become licensed. So you have to do a lot of therapy with like couples or families, things like that. But there at one point in time, there was an opportunity where if you had like family members in a group, you can count those hours as well. So I would run a lot of young people groups where the siblings would be in the same group, etc. And I had to spice up the content because if I read a curriculum for groups and we're talking about forgiveness or we're talking about grief, and I'm just giving them some boring stuff, these are the stages of grief, pre-contemplate. They're not going to resonate with any of that. They're checking out. They're out of here, or they're going to be on their phones. But if I come in and I throw on some Lil Durk, and now they're like, oh, what, Brandon, how you even know about that? And then I point out a line in the song and say, this is when he's talking about his friend that died or his family member that died, and this means something to him.
True.
Now I got them. Now they don't expect me to be playing a raw version of some mixtape that Lil Durk put out, but I have to go there in order for me to get my message across about how we process grief as Black men. Now that might sound crazy if one of my colleagues is walking down the hall and they're like, what the hell is Brandon doing playing that music? They don't get it, but I have to go there to reach them. And unfortunately, what has happened in our space, in this Black manosphere space, is that we have gone there without the mission to reach anybody. We've just gone there because we expect to go there and we like it. And it feels good to belittle and down another person. Like the stuff that Tommy is doing right now. Like I'm just pointing him out. And now he's the king of controversy, all that. But that is so unnecessary. He's talking about somebody stole his talking points. And then I've seen some other Black male YouTubers, Angry Man, saying the same thing. I'm like, what kind of stuff is this? Somebody stole your talking points? Like that is the most feminine thing. I'm sorry, let me back up. I can't be saying these things anymore. That is not masculine. I'll say it that way. That is not masculine. You stole my. That's like me going, Aaron, you stole my talking points. We ain't doing no podcast no more.
Politicians do this every single day, all the time. They talk about the same daggone issues, and nobody's saying somebody stole a talking point ever in the history of the world. People talk about the same thing every single day, Brandon. every single day.
Crazy.
And that's the thing. I'm telling you, Mr. Fuller, yo, it's just a level of immaturity that we have to be honest with ourselves about to where we are in our environments. And when I see this, and then it's like you said, I haven't watched a Tommy video in years. I don't even know what they look like. I don't even know what a Tommy video look like.
You ain't missing nothing.
Once Tariq killed him on Crispy, I was just like, but even that. But here's the thing, Brandon.
But even that, yes.
Even that. Anti-blackness. Crispy. Why is that important? Why is it? Why are you saying crispy? Because you're saying that the image of a dark-skinned black male is negative, and that's unacceptable and inappropriate too. And it has to be called out, because my thought process is like, okay, if Dr. Wilson saw you doing that, what would she say? Well, Dr. Wilson would smack both of y'all on the hand and say you both wrong, not one or the other. And we try to be, we try to play the fence a little bit, but with some of this content, we just can't. But you got to take the other thing I do want to say is that in every genre, and this is where I think the moral compass sometimes as black men, we try to have this moral compass. Human beings are just different. We got some comedy. We got some ratchet. I mean, shoot, the number one indulgers of pornography on the planet are white males. That's a fact. I didn't make that up. They dominate the industry, but nobody looks at them. But nobody looks at them with some moral compass at all. Right. It's just this is just what they make. It's what they make as humans. You know what I'm saying? Like this, they dominate the industry, but nobody's sitting there saying, "Oh, this is inappropriate." They're just like, "Oh, this is what it is." And so for us, we're not monolithic. People do different things. The problem is that when the images are always of one or two things, and then and you and I are not showing our families, showing our friends, showing the people we love the other images of black men, we only showing them the Crispies. We're only letting them watch a Kwame video. You know, if you're going to send somebody a Kwame video, are you going to send them a Brandon video? Are you going to send them a Mr. Fuller video? I mean, you think about it. Let's be honest. Kevin Samuels has 500,000 views on certain videos. Mr. Fuller might get 500,000 views in 10 years, but his content is much more constructive. So we have to ask ourselves, what exactly is important? Like, what are we looking to accomplish? If we're just looking to laugh and giggle, our results are going to continue to be the same.
I mean, and I feel like we're kind of pushed to do that. I feel like we're kind of pushed to be the same. And have one image, and we can't be versatile, and that's where that whole concepts of Nas, Negroes ain't ish, that whole concept puts us in one box, and then we subscribe to that box and those thoughts, and we stay discombobulated. And this is one of the, I understand the high value man piece. I think this is important to talk about, but it does the same thing. It just goes on the other end of the spectrum. So, and this is where a lot of the male content creators talk about Pookie and Ray Rays, again, separating black men, not saying that, we end up getting to now just me saying that's a term. Pookie and Ray Ray, we have what? We have a concept.
We have an image. Dusty. I've said it before. I got an image right in my brain. I know exactly what the behavior is. Right.
And that doesn't mean that we should not have labels for different type of men, but Absolutely. It can't be a versus. It has to be all the men on the spectrum need to get equal talking points, attention, and focus. But what we do is we divide, and especially in the conscious community. And this is why I get kicked out of the conscious community spaces, because I'm like Dr. Amos Wilson. I'm going to point out the trauma that's in there too. When we do that, you're not using African-centered thinking. You're thinking just like a European. And it's like, are we even thinking? I don't think we're critically thinking. We're not using, we're not even thinking about our thinking. We're not. We're just doing it. We're allowing trauma to do what trauma does, which is to continue to have the pain. Nobody's trying to heal. I mean, I can point out another black man who did the same thing Tariq did. And actually, it's funny because these two have had beef with each other too. Umar Johnson. A couple years ago, Umar Johnson, who had the issue with Sarah Sudensetti when he had that crazy video where he had the hat on and he was like this the whole time. Remember that one? He said, what did he say about Sarah Sudensetti? He said, you mad at me because you are albino and you look white, and he was calling them all kind of bees and everything. And it was just like, I mean, that was so clownish that's really how Dr. Umar became a meme, because it was so crazy that people started to make that a meme. And now he says all types of crazy stuff now, but it's the same concept. It's like, no matter how light skinned or dark skinned he is, why would you go there? And again, you're using the same tactics that were used upon yourself to divide you. But when it's time to go to war with words on the internet, we just resort right back to where the trauma has led us. And no one says anything about it. And these are supposed to be your quote unquote leaders.
Yeah.
The leader is looking in the mirror. Like you need to lead yourself. Nobody should lead anybody in the Black community. We have too much trauma. That's
there
it.
Is no leadership.
Unless it's your parent, unless it's your parent, you should only be influenced. You need to lead yourself unless you are under the age of 18. That's it. Because it's just too much trauma. And we put too much investment into people and not enough investment into ideals. Like we don't have a mission. We don't have a vision. It's just like, oh, that's a person that has some talking points that I agree with. So let me follow this individual. And that person's on some every dude that we mentioned has a serious ego issue, and nobody said anything about it. Every male that we've talked about so far has an ego issue.
Absolutely, facts.
Which is human nature, but it points out the flaw. The flaw. Yeah. Even us. I have no idea where this podcast is going to go. This could be the next big thing. We might be up there with Earn Your Leisure.
You might be big, or this could be a car crash, and you get up shut down next week.
I get a shutdown. Hey man, I'm just pointing out. Look, I want people to think. You're the thinker. I'm trying to help people think. Like we got to think about this stuff. Right, At the end of the day, when it comes to Black, this is. I'm getting to a point where we are count the actions of our spokespeople, as Mr. Fuller says, because we don't have leaders, we have spokespeople. The actions of those folks are painting a picture for what Black male leadership should look like in the image of Black men. So when you hear about what Dr. Umar has said, or what Tariq Nasheed is doing, or what Jason Black has said, or even Kwame Brown, even though I agree with a lot of what he's saying, I don't like the delivery. I think if he, shifted his delivery, he could be even bigger and more powerful. I think Kevin is on the right track, but at the same time, I'm like, man, he's spending the content gets repetitive, and he's gonna have to make a pivot at some point because he can't keep telling. I mean, the women are gonna keep coming because it's like a opposing thing, but at some point he has to pivot that content. He can't keep telling people that there are upgradable sixes. Like at some point he has to say something different. And then what? And then what do we do? Because that's not going to last for a long time. I mean, it might, Tom Likas, who's a white man, he did it for years and made millions. And there's been other people who've been radio hosts and stuff like that who did it for years and have made millions of dollars. But what are we going to do? Like we have to think about this. Like at some point, if those people are going to represent us as Black male leaders, those people have serious flaws. And if that's then that's how we're all going to assume that's what leadership looks like. And that's problematic.
Right. Well, first of all, on the internet, you and I both know the term intellectual masturbation. I think that's what it's been taken to the next because
we have intellectual orgies. That's what we have.
That's all it is. Oh my God. Even sometimes I was sitting on my lady, she's like, okay, all right, we get it. We got issues. It's just all the same stuff. The one good thing that I did like that Kevin said the other day is he even admitted, he said, this is my moment in time. He said, I don't know how long it's going to last, but this is my moment. I'm hoping the message gets out, but somebody else is going to be bigger than me, and they're going to take it, and then y'all going to forget about me. He just says, I'm hoping and I'm putting some constructive information out there for people to take in, create some healthy Black families. Now, he is saying these things.
Yes.
As you are saying, the content, people are not taking that part in.
They're not.
People are taking in, baby girl, you were 5, and you got 7 children. Like that's all.
You build like Emmett Smith.
Oh.
Well, I guess she was built bigger.
But yeah, man, I agree with you, man. I just think that it's almost like we talk about Mr. Fuller all the time, Brandon. But can you imagine if the response of Black people was, he said what he said? I mean,
and just moved on.
He said what he said. He has the right. He has the right to that person's opinion. And sometimes I think that that's what needs to be said. But as a community, we're just so used to, like what you just said, taking a side. It's, I got to take this side. I got to take this side. Like, no, it doesn't have to be like that. He said what he said. He's entitled to his opinion. I may not agree with it, but we don't have to get on board and just beef with each other, especially when we realize that the beef is creating entertainment. And specifically, specifically with the Kwame Brown thing, the one issue that I had, even with Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes on their show, and Kwame actually did point it out, and I really found it really fascinating, was that when they were tapping there, I think they were interviewing Jeannie Buss and saying, "Oh, he's not a good player" or whatever. But see, I'm a basketball guy, Brandon. I went back. Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson were not first-round draft picks, and they did not immediately go into the NBA because they had behavioral issues. They had legal issues. So my thing is, like, it's really interesting that you would look at this guy that literally went to the league as a high schooler, and you find it entertaining to belittle him when you couldn't even do, regardless of why, you could not do what he did immediately. You guys almost didn't make a roster until your third year in the league.
Right.
These are the things that we're talking about. And it's like, you don't have to throw stones at one guy to make yourselves look bigger, which is basically what they did. And none of those guys had easy roads in the league. None of them did.
No. Or in life.
Or
like
in
you
life.
Said, they had issues. Both Matt Brown, or both Matt and Steven had legal issues after their careers. Kwame, we ain't heard from Kwame until now, really. I mean, he's been making content for, it seems like, over a year, but ain't nobody really was checking for him until now. He has continued to be a role model and a pillar. Now I think he got into some trouble while he was in the league, but since then, I mean, we haven't really heard about Kwame Brown. And again, when it comes to Matt and Steven, they're not even representing themselves that well. I mean, great. Yeah, they got a show. That's great. But still, like, when you talk about black men representing, those ain't two black men that I'm going to put my kids in front of.
That's a fact, Brandon. That's a fact.
Like, I wouldn't do it. Steven Jackson, I mean, he's all over the place, bro. You go look at his Instagram. 1 minute he got George Floyd. Next minute he's up here talking some crazy stuff. Then he's Muslim. Pick a lane, pick a struggle. Like what are you doing? Like this is what I'm saying. Like, we have to have some consistency in being constructive, man. We can't be constructive one day and then flip the script another day. Like, at some point, that doesn't help our narrative as black men. I'm not saying that we need to be a bunch of robots, but we have to carry ourselves differently to shift this narrative. So,
and even with them, Brandon, I think the thing we forget is that all of them, when I hear Kwame talking, I hear Matt talking, I hear Steven talking. You know what I always hear? Trauma.
Yes.
I hear traumatic experiences. Steven Jackson, and I think he's got like 7 children, a couple baby mamas or whatever. Matt Barnes was gonna kill Derek Fisher, whatever's going on. I mean, it's just, you know what I'm saying? Like Kwame Brown growing up in the environment, and I'm like, and that's where I think I agree with you. And on Kwame was trying to communicate it, he just didn't have the best. He didn't have the best delivery because of the language sometimes, because that's the only way he knows how to talk. But he's like, but Kwame's like, basically, we're from the same place, fellas. We're all black men. And when y'all do this, stop thinking it makes you look bad or it makes me look bad and you look good. It makes everybody look bad because you guys are continuing to perpetuate the content. And I agree with him. I 100% agree with him.
You know, I talk about this with Sam Simmons often, and he brought this to my. I give him full 100% credit to this. He didn't say this verbatim, but Sam pointed something out to me. He said, you know, one of the things that the trauma that we've experienced as black men has done is that it has made us unable to deal with conflicts in a constructive manner. The main way that we address our issues amongst men is to go directly to insults and violence. And we don't have a cultural custom on addressing issues with one another. It's just like I don't even want to use a personal example, but it's like we will avoid one another without communicating. We will go straight to gunplay, or we used to fight, but we don't fight no more. So we'll just go straight to some weapons, or we'll try to. We use sign language. Let's go to Kevin. Black men use sign language just as good as black women do. Like, forget shame, insults, guilt, and then the need to be right. But we don't know how to be wrong. So anything that I say that I don't agree, anything you say that I don't agree with is a problem. So then we go to violence.
Right.
Like, we got sign language and a V. Like that. We do the same thing.
Yeah.
And we have to understand that as black men, if we want to shift this narrative, when we have issues with one another, it's okay to just say, look, I don't agree with what you're saying, and moving on, hash it out and move on. Like it's funny to me. And it's not a generational thing. I've seen this with older black men. Black men who have trauma, which is most of all of us, really.
Yeah, that's all of us. Yeah,
we don't know how to communicate conflict. And this is one of the things why when we get into altercations with authority, I'm not going to say police officers, but that's one example that we can look at plenty of videos. What happens? We start clapping and getting to people's face. I've seen this with teachers. That's really the example I want to use. The teacher says, hey, Jerome, sit down. What does Jerome do? Bitch, you better get up out my face. He's like hopping up in the teacher's face. It's like, bro, sit down. You are in class, my guy. You are supposed to be learning, but you in here clowning. Yeah. The authority figure comes in and says, can you sit down, please, so we get to the lesson? And now you in her face.
Right.
So what do they? So what does the system do? It goes and gets other black men, us, who want to be professionals, and call them behavioral deans to come in and be the enforcers for that kid to sit down. That's how this game is played. But what does that do when the black dean, the hallway dean, who's the cool dude in the neighborhood? Never mind. Let me get off of that. He's the cool dude in the neighborhood, but in the school, he's the behavioral dean, right? But what image does that set? So when the system has an issue with you, we'll get one of your own to come in and tell you what to do and what not to do, and you barely respect that person.
That's facts.
And this is what ends up happening because young black men don't have examples of older black men on how to deal with conflict constructively. So they deal with them in a very non-masculine way, and they start getting lippy, and their bodies start flinging, and they start flinching and doing all this, posturing for you to back up off of them when they could just find a different way to deal with the conflict. But we haven't learned that. So I'm gonna pause there. Go for it.
No, I just think that, man, constructive conflict resolution. I don't know if that's a term, but it need to be one.
Coin it.
Shoot, hey, constructive
thinkerism.
Yeah. Constructive conflict resolution. We have an issue. How do we solve it? Listen, man, Mr. Fuller, how do we solve problems without creating new ones?
Exactly.
How do we do that? Like, how exactly do we solve problems without creating new ones? Because even on some of these YouTube beeps, and we're talking about the image of black men and some of these images we put out, you and I both know, Brandon, we've been in this space long enough to know when you put out a video saying something negative, you're going to put out another video saying something negative, and it's just it's a cycle. It never ever ends until somebody says, I'm just not going to talk about this anymore. And then other platforms pick up on it, and they just continue to perpetuate the cycle. I want to ask you something. We're talking about the image of black men, and I find it very interesting that two of the most popular guys we're just talking YouTube streets, if that's what we can call it, in the YouTube streets.
YouTube is the streets. That is the streets now.
YouTube streets were in the past, I'd say we could say 24 months, have been Derek Jackson and also have been Kevin Samuels, and both of these men are in I call them the same spaces, which is they try to attempt to deal with black relationships. Why do you think these two particular black men got so powerful, and what impacts do you think I'm not talking about anything in Derek's personal life or anything. That's for him and his wife to work out. But how do you think their images have impacted black men overall? Just being in that dating space. I always wanted to ask somebody that's kind of been around a little bit longer. And why did those two particular black men, their images get so popular?
I think they share a lot of commonalities. I think that the non-sexual attention that they both give and the sexual attention that they both give makes them attractive.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Kevin, let's start with Kevin. Kevin's a well-spoken, well-dressed man who has mannerisms that some people would deem feminine. So that makes him attractive, non-sexual attraction for both males and females. Males, because we want to challenge his sexuality for whatever ego, and women because they're fascinated with him. It's like a pet almost. Like this, like, who is this brother in a suit with the thing just moving around and the candles burning and he's got the music playing? That is attractive. They will come to that.
Yeah.
See my background? You know, when I'm on my Zoom call, I'm dead serious, man. Let me zoom out. When I'm on Zoom calls, people are always like, your room is blue. Oh, some people think that this is like a Zoom photo. I'm like, no, this is really the room. And it attracts so much attention and talking point. It's literally a small talk initiator. Let me zoom in. But my point is this: I didn't create this. I didn't create anything in this room. I didn't even paint this room. My wife did all. This was her little quarantine project. But in her mind, when she comes in here, it draws energy. Now, as I've learned, when I come in this room and go in other rooms, it does kind of gravitate some energy up in here. It's a calming room. But as a man, my mind's not thinking. I'm like, I came home like, why the hell is this room blue? Like, what did you doing? Like, why are you painting rooms without talking to me? That's where my head was. But for her, she was trying to get a feeling. That's what Kevin does well. He gives a feeling to the women and to the men. Yep. And he's well spoken and he's telling a lot of truths, and that's what keeps him popular. Now, Derek Jackson does the same thing, non-sexual attention. He's a very physically gifted man.
Right.
The dude is chiseled. He's the archetype. Every black dude under 6 foot wanted at one point in time to look like Derek Jackson. Let's just stop playing.
That's a fact.
He's like 6'5". He's probably 250. Man.
He's solid. He's a solid dude too, man.
Dark chocolate. Yeah. He is the archetype for black women.
Right.
When black women say, well, who they want Derek Jackson with 6 figures. That's exactly what they ask for.
Right. So hold up, Brandon. Is Derek Jackson or Morris Chestnut? Those are the two. Yeah,
exactly. And now the young girls want Chris Brown. They just want some dudes out there. Justin Combs. Oh, but now think about this: non-sexual attraction for both males and females. So when we talk about this, we only talk about it from the female angle in the manosphere. But Derek Jackson does it to men too. It's like, who's this dude pandering to these women, telling them whatever they want to hear, which he is. But he also has energy to hate on, just like Kevin does, because he has the archetypal body. If your body isn't like his, that gives you a reason to not like him.
Yeah, you're right.
So the dudes will watch him to hate, and the women will watch him to fantasize. The same thing they do for Kevin. Now,
good point.
Now, Derek Jackson talking points are very surface for a reason. His base are women. This is where they differ, but they're the same. His base are women. So he keeps it very fluff. 5 reasons why you should leave a man who, texts another woman. Like, that shit is that is whack, man. That's garbage.
Right.
But it's surface enough for women to just latch onto. And I'm not saying that women can't be deep thinkers.
No.
I'm just saying check the comparison. Check the comparison. So he keeps his surface, which makes him safe. Right. On the other end, Kevin doesn't keep his surface. He's talking about female nature, and he's digging deep. How much what's your dress size? He starts pressing buttons with dogs barking and all types. Kevin he be wilding.
It's pretty genius,
he keeps you in there.
Right.
He starts playing potatoes, ham, man. Like, he keeps you in there. They are one and the same. They differ, but that's the same draw. So they're both very popular.
Good point.
For that reason. Now, this is where I think Derek Jackson messed up. Is he ran away with his tail tucked between his legs when he got caught. He should have stood up and just admitted it and just rolled with the punches, because guess what? He still has time to do this, but I think he's been kind of gone for so long that he messed up. Yeah. He could have flipped. He already had the book out, Healed Together. He could have flipped that and kept moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
He could have kept moving forward. He could have flipped that and kept moving forward. Yeah. KS is the same as Derek Jackson. They're one and the same as far as what they do. They're not the same. No. Derek Jackson panders, and Kevin Samuels lets women know the truth about female nature. This is stuff that has been studied for years. You look at the Cabal, and Kevin's he's just giving you a remixed version of things that we've known about male and female nature. And he's giving it to you in a way that Derek Jackson doesn't. He's just giving it to you raw. You want the medicine? Go ahead and log into my Zoom, because I'm gonna ask you some questions, and I'm gonna get you up out of here. That's it.
Right.
Like, and if you go ahead.
No. I was gonna say, even with everybody is very, very problematic in all of their approaches, because even with Kevin, and here's the thing, and Kevin will admit this, he's only coming from one spectrum. So he's coming from one standpoint. He's not talking about how to create normal, healthy relationships between Black men and women. That's not what he's talking about. He's specifically talking about, okay, for you ladies that say you want Black Jesus to look like D Wade and make $1 million, he doesn't exist. Yes. But one thing he doesn't do, which I think he tries to, but he doesn't do it well, forget about the average brothers, but the Black men that are just amongst us every single day, he doesn't give them value. And the reason he doesn't give them value is because you are still on that screen, Kevin. And no matter, like you just said, Brandon, no matter all that, he's a plumber, he does it, they want you.
Yes.
They want you. They want, okay, well, is the plumber going to have the light smith? Is the plumber going to have the blow smith?
Is he going to smell this good? Is his tie going to be that straight?
Utah Ford, you know what I'm saying? So
you have that watch on?
Yeah, I think he does get that. But he's also saying that's not my message.
Right.
He's like, you know, he's like, I can talk for the blue collar guys, but there might be other platforms to where the blue collar guys can speak for themselves and stuff like that. So everybody has a lane, man. But no, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think people do realize that both of those gentlemen and all of these guys have figured out how to use that YouTube algorithm properly, whether we like it or not, how to get the views. But back to the image, what are some constructive things? And I think that one of the things that I want to we can go back and forth, naming some constructive things that we as Black men specifically can do in reference to our image. And the first thing that I would probably like to say, that I want to bounce one off of you, is that we have to be very, I don't want to say cognizant, but we need to be thinking that everybody's watching us all the time in everything that we do. In our personal relationships, in our work relationships. And these are things that I've struggled with in my personal life, in my work relationships, with my son, with my mother, is that somebody is always watching me. And when we think like that, we have to be very specific and intentional about our behavior. And I don't know if we're always doing that. I don't know if we're always doing that. And it's bigger than us, because it's about our community. Since we have such a poor image, we have to be more intentional about it. What's something that you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was gonna say the exact same thing, but I'm gonna add to your point, because you're spot on, and I'll add another point. In order to do that, we have to be comfortable ourselves with who we are. Black men, we when we code switch as Black men, we change. It's like having multiple personality disorder. We do a complete flip. Like, it's okay to talk different to different people and show up in space different, but don't change who you are when you do that. You should still be you, no matter where you show up. When you have that level of comfortability in your identity, it makes it a lot easier for you to be a role model, because you are just doing what you do. No matter where, we bring up Mr. Fuller all the time. No matter if he's on the Cows, he's on his own show. I mean, I listen to something, I think this been a recording from like the 70s. He sounds the exact same. I bet you, I've actually talked to Mr. Fuller on the phone. Same person. I've talked to Dr. Umar Johnson on the phone. I tried to get him to come here on the conference. I seen him at our Urban League. He came here, very different character, one-on-one than in person. We have to be the same type of person no matter where we show up, because when you have that kind of foundation in your identity, it makes it easier to be a role model. So that's one thing, is, like you said, make sure that, understand that somebody's always watching. And really, I think for us, the opportunity is that somebody might be a younger Black male. Like, if we just did it for the youth, I think that that's a noble way and a noble focus for us. Don't do it because we do stuff to outshine the next Black man. That's what
not for the community. You're Brandon. Let's be real. We're not doing it for the community. We're doing it for our ego, or to go shine on other people. That's a fact, man.
Yeah,
that's a fact.
That's why we turn up our music a little bit louder when we go through the hood. It's like, let me turn this bass up a little bit. Right. What do we? Mr. Fuller calls that rattling cages. That's why we do that stuff. Yeah. But again, that is not masculine. That's a different trait. I'm not gonna say what kind of trait it is. That's a different trait when we're trying to show up on the level playing field and outdo one another. That's not how men compete. This is one thing that Kevin does talk about. And I think Anton talks about it too, but I have issues with the way he does it as well. But in order for us to compete, we should be competing on different types of levels. And it should be out of the gist of just getting better instead of saying I'm better than you. It's just, look, this is what I do. You go get a boat, I go get a boat. You do this, I do this. And we keep on moving on. I see that you see the comment. Kevin dehumanizing black.
I don't agree. No, but I want to get to that because
let's get to. Hold on 1 second. Let's finish the thought and then we'll jump to that. We'll close on the dehumanizing.
We'll close on that one, right?
Because that's a whole nother podcast, man.
Yeah, we can do one show. Yeah.
So one is always show up as somebody's watching. But I think another thing that we can do is be able to have constructive dialogue without being conflictual. I think that's important. Understand how to talk to one another. I think that there's times and spaces that we don't know how to have dialogue beyond sports and sex with one another, or music. Sometimes we'll discuss music as well. But beyond that, it gets very, very difficult for many men. You're in real estate. I think if me and you, let's say we had coffee every week, every Thursday morning, we talk coffee. At some point, I would hope that you're telling me something about real estate. This is what's happening. This is because that's your area of expertise. I come with the psychology background. I got some leadership stuff, some diversity, equity, inclusion. I'm probably going to be talking about what's happening in these companies and how I help this leader do X, Y, and Z. That's how we have conversation. But the conversation is very short in black male spaces. Like we talk about the barbershop. What are the top 3 things we talk about in the barbershop? Women, sports, buying things.
And then go back to women's sports environment.
Like, that's it. Now, me and my barber, we have a different type of relationship. So we're talking about, a lot of times we're talking about business. I'm like, how business going? How many barbers did you have to let go this month?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh man, you know what? I tell him all the time, you can get grants for this, because he's always like, man, I want to do something. I want to do backpack giveaways. Like he does all this dope stuff. Yeah. So I'm like, man, have you ever thought about doing a literacy program? Like you can put books right there. I know people who give out money for this. You can get a grant, start a nonprofit under your LLC. Like we're having a different type of conversation, and it's a different vibe. But guess what? That's me and him at the barbershop. Everybody else is gone. They're talking about music. They don't even know what the hell is going on.
Right.
But again, we have to be able to do that. And then we be networking like, oh, do you know so-and-so? They do this. And he wants to create content. So it's a different type of conversation. We have to be able to have that without having conflict and being comfortable enough to share those things, because a lot of us have talents and gifts that we don't share with one another. And that's one thing I do appreciate about the Black manosphere, is that they'll start talking about comic books and movies and all this stuff. I'm not into none of that, so that's when I have up the conversation. But the fact that it's there, I appreciate it, and maybe I will learn a little bit about it. But for the most part, that's not my interest, so I just kind of bow out, or I'll listen. But that's what's important. So, any other suggestions that you have for Black men?
Nah, let's leave it on those, because I want to get to this. I want to hit this question right.
Go ahead. All right.
So the first thing is that the words are important, and dehumanizing Black women, that's not true. That's not true. As a wise man even said it, I don't even know who it was that said it on the internet. Shahrazad Ali. Mm-hmm. Literally, if you take Kevin's talking points, and you know this, Brandon, and you take her talking point, this is a woman that all these Black women respect. She's in Hidden Colors 1 and 2 and all this stuff.
The queen.
They are saying the same exact thing to the key. Now, you wouldn't say Shahrazad Ali is dehumanizing Black women when she says the same thing. You may not like his approach, but I agree with him sometimes. We have to be mature enough to remove the messenger and listen to the message. And I don't agree with everything he says either. I've already given you some points. But dehumanizing? Dehumanizing, I think that one of the things that he does very, very well, if you're a thinking person, is that he's always pointing out, especially when he goes into the numbers, is that he actually is showing Black people how surface and superficial we are sometimes, if you think about it. Because the women that are calling saying, oh, I want these many kids, I want this, I want that, Do you know how much it takes to live in Minnesota in this area? Do you know how much money the guy has to make? Do you know this? Do you know this? Do you know this? Do you know this? Okay. So if you're in a room, and I break this down, me and my lady have talked about this. So you put 100 men in a room, 2 of them would meet that criteria. What about the other 98? Are they bums? He's not dehumanizing women. He's putting their talking points he's putting their talking points and almost making you realize, man, what I'm thinking about, it doesn't even make sense. But that is so many women's different perspectives on Black men. And let's be real, Brandon, Black men and relationships today.
Right.
How they're viewing relationships. It's get the bag, get this, get that. We are not in a position to be thinking about any of that stuff. We need to be trying to figure out how to have healthy relationships before we talk about getting the bag and power couples and stop it. Healthy relationships.
Fantasy.
Healthy relationships, partnership, how I can help you, how you can help me. But that gets lost because the girl that's calling in is saying I'm a 10 and he's like, time out. He's like, time out. We need to stop what we're thinking about, because in the history of mankind, men and women, we don't work like that. We don't. Right. Now you want to change the rules because your circumstances are different. And like I said, I'm not saying what he's saying is incorrect, but dehumanizing, he's had women on there that agree with his talking points. Are they dehumanized? I don't know about that. I just don't agree with that comment. They're dehumanizing them? Because he has women, Brandon, you and I both know there are women that call in and say, I agree with you. There are women that call in with they're successful, they have their spouses, and they're calling and saying, I agree with what he's saying. I agree, this is my perspective. Married women call in there, divorced women call in there, and some of them actually call in there and talking about their traumatic experiences. And here's the one thing they never talk about, Brandon, we can shut up. He always says, I suggest you should go to therapy.
Yep.
Because you got some things to work out. He always says that. I don't know how that's dehumanizing women. That's a very broad statement.
Do you know who BRS Cash is?
That name sounds so familiar. I've heard it before, man.
Oh, you heard it. You heard the song. Throat Babies.
Oh, now he is dehumanizing women.
Throat baby. Now, is Kevin dehumanizing women like BRS Cash? How about this? That shit. That is a song that just dropped on Friday. It's top 5. Guess who dropped that song? Meg Thee Stallion.
Let me. I was gonna say it's Megan Thee Stallion, probably.
Meg Thee Stallion.
City girls. I mean, I know.
Listen. If he is, he has to be dehumanizing on the same level as those individuals. And Black women get dehumanized all the time. And I would encourage people to actually watch a full episode of Kevin and not just clips on WorldStar or that pop up on Instagram. Because if you actually watch the show, he's actually given a lot of constructive information. Now, when he does start to go off the rails and do things that I don't agree with, like press dog barking buttons, this is when what happens. Women start they start attacking him. Like Kevin's a very mild-mannered person until he starts getting attacked. Then he gives them the same energy. Right. And that's what people don't like. They don't expect a man to give the same energy that is being brought in his direction. That's where the dehumanizing people, like that dog barking thing, is dehumanizing. I would not do that. I would not start pressing dog barking buttons when women are talking. I think that's crazy. But if he's going to dehumanize anybody, I think we need to he needs to be in the same category as Meg Thee Stallion, this guy who sings Throat Babies, City Girls, and any of these other artists who are having it. I mean, I did not know. First of all, I thought the song was called Throat Baby. It's Throat Babies. And I didn't know that till I heard it on the radio after I dropped my daughter off at school. Literally a couple weeks ago. The damn song, I'm like, this song is on the radio? And then I listened to the slightly clean version, and he was saying, let me give you these throat babies. I thought he was calling her throat baby. No, he was talking about relieving himself in her oral cavity. There we go. So
hey, good way to end it.
Listen, man, we might not like it. And this is one thing I wanted to say earlier when we were comparing Derek Jackson and Kevin Samuels.
Right.
There is now a lane of opportunity for someone, I think, and I hope it's not just one person. I hope it's multiple. There's going to be a black man who's going to be in the middle of those two, and he's going to be bigger than both. And it's going to be a younger black dude, probably in his late 20s, early 30s. He's going to be good looking, and he's going to be in between a Derek Jackson and a Kevin Samuels. And that is going to be a dangerous person. And I hope it's not just one. I hope it's many different men who look very different and are not Derek Jackson-like or dress as well as Kevin Samuels. Because then the narrative of black men will start to shift. And I think the conversation amongst healthy, black male-female relationships will shift as well, because now you're hearing it from black men who all look different, who are not, placating to what women want.
That's a good point.
And is not, on the level of Kevin, where it's just it gets so much negative attention, even though a lot of the information is constructive, it's so negative. I think that there's a lane of opportunity for somebody to be kind of right in the middle of those two to really push this narrative differently. But it starts with folks like us having these conversations, creating content, and moving forward. And also, I think that it comes with accountability on both sides. Women have to hold women accountable. Kevin has created a lane. I've seen several women create YouTube channels, and some who already had them and they blew up since Kevin, who are talking directly to women about being accountable, and they're talking about the unrealistic standards that a lot of women have. And they've grifted off of that. And then I don't see the men doing it yet, though. Like, that's the opportunity. If somebody has to start talking on our end to the men, that may be us. So any final thoughts or comments from you, the thinker, before we wrap up?
No, I was actually just going to say, I think that's where we're attempting to do with this particular platform, because we've already done, I want everybody to smash that like button, but we've already done episodes on relationships with our moms, being constructive professionals in the area, all these different things, black men holding other black men accountable in reference to our behavior and what our standards should be. And I think that's the number one thing, is that we have to be able to look at one another and be able to protect ourselves, and not always look for these we can't be looking for outside people to control our image. And that's just the reality. We control our image by what we do every single day, how we communicate with our families, our loved ones, our spouses, our moms, our dads, our nieces, our nephews, our brothers, our uncles. It's United Independent for a reason. It's not United Independent, everybody come together. It's United Independent. So everybody just take a look at yourselves, look at yourself in the mirror. Let's keep on doing the work. But if you found the content constructive, please go share it with somebody else. And we appreciate you guys tuning in.
Absolutely. And we will see you again next week on another episode of the Jegna and the Thinker. Peace.